Support for Carolina Business Review is provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. Please visit us at southcarolinablues.com. And Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
The sound of no political ads is almost deafening now. So now what? Well, back to the business of ideas and community and commerce. Welcome again to the longest running, the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy, seen each week across North and South Carolina for 25 years now. Now in large part as we see our way clear out of the bombastic political season, what is worth knowing and talking about? What issues again come to the fore that need attention and constructive debate? Well, in a moment, we'll discuss a few. And later on, longtime Carolina corporate citizen, CommScope CEO Eddie Edwards joins the dialogue.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Grady Johnson, president and group publisher of SC Biz News, Mayor Newell Clarke from Lexington, North Carolina, and special guest Eddie Edwards, president and CEO of CommScope.
Hello, welcome to our program. Mayor, Grady, good to have you both here.
Yes, Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
Mayor, I'm going to start with you. This seems like low-hanging fruit. Gosh, you're a public servant. We're coming out of a political season, Mayor, that has been very acrimonious, very anger-filled. It's been sorely bitter. I mean, I could use a lot of other adjectives to describe this. Mayor Clarke, is this... Where is all this passion and this feeling and this anger? Where is this coming from, you think?
Well, you know, we're definitely hearing from the citizens and in terms of them speaking, but it's amazing to me when we look at our communities and we reach out to our citizens, and a lot of times I hear from them, I'll hear them say, you're not listening to us, you're not listening to us. And sometimes locally for us in Lexington, sometimes that means maybe they didn't get what they wanted, so they're just saying, well, we weren't listening. But I think that there's a long history here that if you look back, and we've always had turmoil in our political system. We've got two parties, and that's always existed. But what didn't exist is the immediacy. And one little thing happens, and maybe 10 years ago, we wouldn't even have heard about it. But now we're seeing it on Twitter, we're seeing it on Facebook, everyone's talking about it. We deal with that locally all the time. We make a decision at City Council on Monday night, and the very next morning, it's already on social media and it's all over the place. And the unfortunate thing about that is the citizens don't always have every bit of the information. They just have a little bit of that information. And all of a sudden, I'm working backwards to get back in touch with them, explain what we did, why we made that decision, the months that it might have gone into making that decision. But a lot of times, the media aspect of it is just snippets, and people get infuriated. They hear one thing and they just run with it. But it's nothing that happened overnight. I mean, this has been ongoing, and I think we've lost a little bit of trust in our public officials. And I think that's one of the reasons we saw a lot of the candidates rise that they did. They felt as if they were being frank and talking to them directly in those senses. But it's something it's amazing to see from community to community because some communities seem like they're just guiding along fine. And then others, there's a lot of unrest.
Grady, bring you into this too, from the Fourth Estate, or you could even say the Fifth Estate. Where do you think this acrimony comes from? Forget about each political candidate. I'm not asking you about your politics. I'm asking about the anger and the epic behavior of people when they get engaged in a political dialogue?
Well, in addition to what Newell was saying about the immediacy, just to add to that, there were, centuries where publishers published. Now everyone's a publisher. And so anyone can publish without any kind of journalistic training, ethics, rigor. So that adds to it, and the immediacy makes it exacerbates all of that. The other thing that I think our society is dealing with and our culture is dealing with is it's now infotainment and not news. And so what's happening is there are lots of so-called news outlets now who frankly are espousing only one side of the equation and are adding in the aspect of the economic driver of why they do that and how that is accomplished and the audience to whom they're dealing. And it becomes one-sided and to the extreme because no one, the old things that, it's not news unless the house is on fire. There's no news of, hey, here's a whole block of buildings not on fire, right? So you have to, if you think about it, it's all about entertaining that audience, and it's gone well away from informing the audience, and it's morphed into entertaining. And I think a large swath of the population has failed to grasp that. Add to that the internet and anyone's ability to self-tune. You can tune out the things that are unpleasant to you, such as the opposing opinion.
All right, well, let me come back to this. And we don't have, unfortunately, I asked the question, kind of open up the Pandora's box. We don't have a whole lot of time to go really deep into this, but Mayor, I'll come back to you on something you said. You said something about, that maybe voters or citizens are not as informed as they should be. Thomas Jefferson, not to get too arcane here, but Thomas Jefferson called that defective citizenship. Didn't have anything to do with the politicians, but when folks are not engaged in the truth and the facts about a debate. So again, not to lead you along this, you think that's the biggest part?
Well, it's one of those things when we're dealing with it locally in terms of information. We're constantly struggling with where do we get the information out in terms of what are our citizens reading, what are they listening to, what do they pay attention to on a regular basis. And it's hard to hit all of those and make sure you're getting the message out. But it really is. You think about it in a world where you can, 140 characters, you can put something out. You can't tell all the information that needs to be told in 140 characters. But yet we have generations out there that are actually living by that. And they take that, and it's very difficult from a municipality because I'll give Davison County as an example. There's nearly 50 newspapers that are subscribed to. So from a mayor's position in Lexington, where do I put the message out? What radio station, what newspaper, all of those sort of things. And it can be difficult. But I can tell you, the reason I even bring that up is because when I sit with citizens and have a conversation with them, they always leave that feeling better, feeling different, because they got all the information. And when I can educate them and help them understand why we made that decision, it's a radically different response. But we're in a world of sound bites. And people grab that, and it's so easy to hear one thing, and then all of a sudden you're sitting around the coffee shop, and the conversation is about those 7 sentences as opposed to the full dialogue.
Right. Grady, so, and this is going to be the last question on this particular issue. So do you think this high watermark of blood sport politics that we've seen recently, do you think this is just a high watermark that's going to be bested at the next political cycle or the next political season? Or do you think there's going to be some more demure sensibility that comes back into politics?
I think we're in for sort of a frothy time here. I don't think it just goes away quietly. My hopes are exactly the opposite. But I think this whole situation we find ourselves in, aided and abetted by technology, I don't think it gets better. I think we all have to work really hard to keep a lid to keep a lid on things.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you think about it real quickly in that sense, particularly in the presidential race. You know, if you're not strong, if you don't fight, then all of a sudden you're looked at as weak. So where do you find that balance?
Spoken by somebody that's out on the leading edge and the bleeding edge in some cases.
Yeah.
So in about 30 seconds each, and this is not going to be enough and not fair to ask you this question in 30 seconds. Mayor, do you think now that we're past that political season, past the most recent election, do you think there's going to be an appetite for North Carolina, and specifically the General Assembly, to take another look at the possibility of accepting federal Medicaid dollars? Is this going to be in the cards, you think?
Well, it's going to be interesting. You hope so. In certain ways, you look at the General Assembly, and I always refer to it as the boys on Jones Street. But we know that it's men and women that are all serving us up there. But you'd like to think that they would take a look at that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, and just as an example, as a small community, one of the things that's made us successful is we work together. Mm-hmm. We work with our county commissioners, we work with our state representatives, we work with our federal representatives, and we can't just operate by ourselves. And North Carolina is North Carolina, but we're also part of the United States, and we've got to look at ourselves as we can't just do this all by ourselves. You know,
and I want to make mention just quickly that you had said before the program, Lexington, North Carolina, Davidson, North Carolina, Davidson County, North Carolina specifically, was a bit of a donut in that you had Republican county control. You yourself are Republican, but city council is Democrat. So
correct.
If it works in that experimental lab, it seems that it might work more broadly. What about South Carolina, quickly, on Medicaid? Do you think there's going to be an appetite now that Nikki Haley's not going to run for governor? She can't, but there might be more of a friendly nature in the State House around Medicaid funding?
I seriously doubt it. I don't see that happening in South Carolina.
You don't think so?
No, I think we've, as a state, we've under Haley specifically, we've done some extraordinary things during her tenure, and so she's been, in my opinion, just an outstanding leader. But I don't see that happening.
All right, thanks.
I wish it would, because we could sure use the dough. Like Newell's saying, it's just common sense, but that's the one place where I think we're not exercising it.
All right, well, we'll see. More to come. Next week on our program, coming up in the next few weeks, actually, his name is John Skvarla. He's been on the program before. Secretary of Commerce for North Carolina will be here again, talking about commercial activity, but more than that, talking about policy. And now what? Especially in light of HB2, and we're not going to go down that road too far. And then also Lynn Good is the CEO of this country's largest utility, Duke Energy. She will be here as well. According to our guest's website, Hickory, North Carolina-based CommScope was there and present at the genesis and the construction of things like the cable television infrastructure, wireless networks, data centers, smart buildings, et cetera, et cetera. Founded in Hickory now 63 years ago, the company has revenues closing in on $5 billion, over 20,000 employees in 100 countries. Not bad for the demure Catawba and Caldwell County native. Joining us now is CommScope President and Chief Executive Officer Eddie Edwards. Eddie, hello and welcome to the program.
Chris, thanks.
So most people, as you well know, Eddie, that have any kind of device or any kind of technology that's based on what your company will be at the core or the center of, they're worried about two things. How many bars do I have and how fast is this thing moving? I know that it's a little flippant, but Eddie, what is behind this whole intelligent technology, wired infrastructure that you all are on the cutting edge of that's worth knowing now the next couple of years?
Well, it's an insatiable demand for bandwidth utilization. So people want to be connected. You go to a football game, you go to a Panthers game, our equipment's there. So it allows you to talk, it allows you to upload video and communicate with instantaneously, which is what the people want today. It's no longer willing to wait. But that bandwidth, our fiber connectivity business is strong in that, as well as our wireless business also. So it's a great place to be right now because that demand, from our point of view, is insatiable, and we see nothing but growth in the future.
We see the promises from Time Warner, now Spectrum. We see the promises from Google about 1 gig download speeds. Is that, not are those empty promises, but how widespread is that kind of connectivity and that kind of speed going to be in the next couple of years?
You're seeing a great investment starting now that will, excuse me, that will enable us to have that gig capability or higher almost anywhere. It's not today. In some countries like Korea and Japan, you have widespread gigabit speed capability. In the U.S., you're building it. The cable operators, as well as the former telcos, as well as alternate providers, are all doing that. Not just in the backhaul, but also in their data centers to make sure that that they're running at a faster speed. That demand for the bandwidth utilization is our friend, driven by the change in technology and driven by people's expectation of that instantaneous knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mayor, question?
Well, you know, Eddie, one of the things that I think all small communities, we're all talking about our different generations that we have. And, you know, one of the things that was interesting I was going to ask you about with CommScope is, you know, how do you guys engage the millennials? It's in a workplace that might have 4 different generations that are working, but I know that's something you've had success with, but how are you guys engaging them on what you do, educating them on what you do, and bringing them into your company, making them successful?
Okay, we operate in over 100 countries. We have 25,000 people, of which 2,000 are here in North America, and so I'll speak to that part, I guess, better. It's more known to our audience, I guess. We engage with the younger people. We are a low turnover environment here in North America. We've been in business as the new CommScope for 40 years, and so we still have people that joined us the day we started over 40 years ago, and so that turnover is low. But our age is now on average mature, and we're going to see a change in that in the near term. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a change where that millennial group will occupy over half of the workforce that we have here. So, you know, we engage with the high schools in Catawba County to bring them to our locations there and let them see what we do. We're not a common name, you know, we're not a consumer product, so the people that use us know us well, but the people on the street is not a common name. So we have to educate them. We work with the universities as the people transition through the engineering classes there. We're a heavily engineer-oriented company. And so we do that to get them engaged with us while they're still in school to understand what CommScope's about. We have 5 locations in North America, and so we try to put them in all these different places to let them see the differences of what we are. But that millennial is important to us, not just from a future working associates, but also as a customer base, because they are the big users of this bandwidth, and from a consumer standpoint, and that social media need they have, the photo albums, so where we used to have pictures and books, it's all online now, and so that's what our products and solutions support.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Eddie, with demand being insatiable, what are the technological barriers that need to fall for the curve to keep going the way it's going? I mean, I know on a regional level, it's more distribution type things, but what needs to happen sort of technologically for the growth to continue?
Well, in the wireless segment, people are talking about 5G coming. We're still in the midst of 4G transition, and this started at a 1G, and about every decade it's increased, and the speeds, the capability, the utilization's also improved. What's going to happen in 5G is you're going to have a more densified network. So you'll see smaller cell sites. You'll see cell sites that you won't recognize as a cell site. Could be a patch on a window, or things like that, to make that indoor efficiency communicate with the outside plant, to make sure that latency or speed of transmission is minimized. To get to where you have autonomous cars, that latency has to be virtually zero, because you can't have a car waiting to decide what it's going to do next. So that's really critical in the wireless world, because that's what will drive it to make sure that technology's available. We have about 1,000 R&D folks around the world. We spend about $250 million a year in R&D. So we try to keep up with what's necessary in our various businesses to make sure that we are at that leading edge and can help determine what that technology is going to be.
So has our technology dramatically outrun our ability to police it and to set policy? And Eddie, I think specifically about FCC rules and regs, but also security and privacy issues. I mean, this thing has gotten so big so quickly. Is it in danger that we're not being able to keep up with the way it ought to be run and managed and at least watched?
That's a step or two outside of what we do. It is a concern in the community as to the ability of people to listen to, a lot of our equipment that we make or that's attached to our equipment is electronic, and you can do a lot of things with electronic gear. And so you read in the paper about that and the concern that people have, and the concern they have with people in other countries and how they will adapt to that concern. So we work with standards bodies. We work with all of the developers of these products to make sure that our network works as planned, whatever that may be. But I think it is a growing concern, and we certainly see it here in the U.S. as well as other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. No.
Eddie, I was going to, one of the things that I was thinking about is if you could share with us kind of what's the next big thing for your business, for CommScope, other than moving to Lexington. I understand. But if you can, what can you share with us today that, what's the next big thing for you guys to take to the next level? Because you're always looking at that growth. You're always looking, so what's next for you guys?
Well, we're in the midst. We acquired a company just over a year ago. It increased our size by about 60%. So we went from just around $3 billion to around $5 billion, and so we're in the midst of eating that acquisition, I guess. And we're in the integration part. So we're having to make sure our factories are located in the right place. We have the right number of people doing the right jobs, and we are a diversified manufacturing platform. Of the $5 billion that we do in revenue, about 85% of that we manufacture ourselves. So we have to have a widespread distributed network of being able to manufacture. So we look at options all the time. So in the $100 to $300 million range, we're looking for things that are opportunistic. And anything bigger than that right now, we need to get through the finishing of this integration and then start again. But our growth, we started as a $11 million business in 1940, and we're $5 billion today. And so that growth has primarily been through acquisition, and we're available to do that going forward. We have to get this one finished or well underway before we do anything of significance.
We've got about a minute left, Grady, so let me jump in here and kind of wrap it up quickly. So Eddie, as you look out the next 5 and 10 years, and specifically from what you do, not just as a manufacturer, but clearly as a designer of networks, and you're kind of looking around the corner to figure out where you need to position CommScope. What are you most excited about to say that we've got this done, we're doing this right, and we've got less than a minute?
The good part about it is that we're the leader in each of the things that we do. So in the wireless world, and what we make and what we sell, we are the leader in that. In the fiber optic side, we are a leader in that as well. And so we spend the money necessary to make sure that we evolve with the marketplace. The BNS acquisition that you spoke of was a big step on the fiber side to get us to have a very well matched, diversified communications capability.
Okay.
So it's not just one side, we have both sides of how people are going to communicate in the future.
You know, I can tell you all are very excited about that recent acquisition, and it seems to be assimilating well. So congratulations. That was a big one. Thank you. Please come back, and try not to make it 15 years before we have you.
Sure.
You or Frank back. Thank you. Grady, good to see you.
My
Mayor,
pleasure.
good luck with barbecue in Lexington.
Thank
Good
you
to
very
see
much. We've got a good start on that.
Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina. Please visit us at southcarolinablues.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.